Hello, Green Team. We are on part 2 of 6 of marketing a listing. Just a reminder, this series is to take us from the part where we are activating the listing in the MLS all the way through getting our first offer on the property. So that's what we're talking about in this series. And specifically today, we're on part 2, which is presenting the property. And there are 5 sections of today's video. We're going to start with coordinating showings, then going through accepting and rejecting requests, then prepping buyer's agents, preparing the property, and then receiving feedback. So we're going to start off at coordinating showings. So when you post a property in the MLS, you're going to enable showing time, which allows agents to see the property in the MLS and request a showing. If they request it through showing time, it's going to alert you through your selected option that you selected back when you were setting up showing time. If you remember, we set it up through here that you either did text, email, or a push notification. And so if you get that notification via text, it looks like an agent name will be on there, a time and a date, and it'll say confirm Y or N, and you can just type a Y or an N to confirm or reject the showing. So some of the key things we want to talk to about the sellers, and sometimes this can be a bit of a touchy subject. For some reason, sellers sometimes want to remain at the property during showings, but the truth is they really need to be out of the house for the showing, and they don't need to be on the driveway or in the front yard or something like that. They need to be off the property. And the reason we do this is because when these buyers are walking through the house, we want to give them the opportunity to really visualize themselves as being the owners of the house, it being their place, and what it would look like and what it would feel like for them to own the property. And when you have a seller there, sometimes that comfort is just not there, and the buyer's agent's also not comfortable, and it may reduce the chance that we actually get an offer out of this showing because they're not actually able to put themselves in the property as being their own, in addition to a seller asking a bunch of questions or things like that. Now, there are times on big rural properties or very unique properties that it does help to have the seller just there to kind of answer questions, but staying away from the whole showing process. They're just kind of off to the side. And if someone has a question, they can kind of reach out or ask them about something. So sometimes that's nice. The other thing that's nice is if the buyer's agent just feels comfortable texting you maybe some questions during the showing, and you're comfortable texting the sellers, so maybe you can get them a little bit of info ahead of time. That works great too. But the key is we want to make sure these buyers feel like this property is theirs and they can picture themselves there while they're there for this 15 to 30-minute period. Now, there are times that sellers have maybe a kid's birthday party or something, and they've just got like a 4-hour period that they can absolutely not have people in the house. That's great. We can work through that. But we want to get out in front of it, and we want to actually black out those times. And you can do that through showing time and actually black out those times. No appointments can be requested. And we give the sellers that opportunity to have the home for themselves without having to worry about a potential showing or something like that. So we'll work from that front end and being proactive and blocking out those times. And it's important that we're available, and we try to allow the sellers try to allow as many appointments as possible, because you never know when that's one of the few times that buyer can see the property, or by canceling a showing or denying a showing request, they go see another property that they end up liking and making an offer, and we missed out on that opportunity. So although the sellers, we understand the complications and the annoyance and the challenges of getting your house ready over and over, we need to express to them the importance of availability so that we can make sure we're getting the max exposure to the market and potentially the best offer possible. So when we get these showing requests via text, we can either accept or reject them. If we need to propose other times, we'll need to go into the app. You can go to your showing time app, and the request will look like this format instead of just a text format. And you'll see on here you have confirm appointment, decline appointment, or propose new time. So say they've requested a time and the sellers just don't have quite enough time to get the house ready or whatever. So they're just asking for an extra 30 minutes or an hour or whatever. You could propose a new time in here, put in maybe a couple notes. The other option is you could text that buyer's agent and just say, hey, they have this issue. Anyway, we can do this time. So in general, instead of just declining appointments blindly, we should never really be doing that. We should always be proposing a new time and trying to make the showing work as best as possible. Sometimes that just takes a little extra communication between the seller and the buyer's agent to make sure that we're facilitating the communication back and forth to get everybody on the same page. The only time we'd be declining appointment is if we happen to have this still enabled and they ended up accepting an offer, and we just haven't gotten to disabling and making it pending in the MLS yet. But we want to do that as soon as possible so that we don't have these conflicts that we have to deal with. So the next thing we want to talk about is prepping buyer's agents. So if you want to really do your fiduciary responsibility as a seller's agent for making sure that each buyer knows everything they possibly can about the house and we're going to get the best possible offers from these buyers, we want to make sure that we're getting all the info, including all upgrades. If you don't have enough room in the MLS to put all the upgrades to the property, simply add a sheet to your supplements in the MLS, just detailing. It can be a simple Word document, just kind of detailing all the upgrades to the property and improvements. And you can post that in the MLS so that they have it every time they show it. Obviously, disclosures need to be updated, and we would, help point out if there's any questions on it. And then we want to make sure that we add any inclusions and exclusions in the MLS, but also let the buyer's agent know. So I think a really good rule of thumb is when a showing is confirmed, especially if you're not getting like 50 showings in a day, send a quick text to the buyer's agent and give them just a little rundown of here's some things you might mention, because the buyer's agent's going to appreciate this because it's going to make them look better while they're showing, like they're more knowledgeable about the property. It's going to make the buyers maybe more excited about the property and more likely to make an offer. So do the prep work there to send that info. And you can even set it up in showing time when a request gets approved, that it automatically sends something to the buyer's agent, maybe an upgrade list or something like that. And so keep in mind that our job is to make sure that we're prepping those buyer's agents ahead of time. The second thing is we want to make sure we communicate with our sellers. And if it's a vacant property that we're preparing, we want to make sure we get it prepared for every showing. You want those buyers walking in with the lights on, windows open, so there's as much natural light as possible. And you may even have, if the sellers want to light a candle, if they're coming back right after the showing, they can light a candle or maybe put their little plug-in air freshener or whatever they have. We don't want that smell to be overwhelming, and we certainly don't want it to smell like we're covering up something. But it always helps just to have a little extra scent in the air, a little positive when people walk in the door. That's just going to make them feel more at home as they walk through the property. And you can let the agents know if the lights should be on when they leave the property, or if you'd like them to turn them off or close windows or something like that. But the key is when those buyers walk in, we want that property to look the best it possibly can to make sure we're maximizing the value of every showing. The agents are putting in effort to schedule these. Buyers are taking off work or driving right after work, or getting someone to watch the kids. So we want to make sure every possible showing is in the perfect scenario. And it's important to communicate with our sellers that when they leave the house, they want to leave it in a way that they're comfortable with the buyers walking in directly after them and seeing the house in the best possible light. This can turn into exact dollar signs, depending on how people feel about the house, and making sure we get the best possible offer. You never want to miss out on a showing. Then the final thing is, after these showings happen, we're going to automatically, the system will request feedback from the buyer's agent. And I use a general 24-hour rule. So sometimes my sellers 2 minutes after the appointment will say, what did they think about the house? And I'll say, well, I'm waiting on feedback still. And my rule is I don't reach out to the buyer's agent because maybe they're showing 5 other houses, maybe they're discussing it, maybe they have a meeting later that night to discuss it. I give them 24 hours before I really start bugging them. The system, again, will ask for feedback immediately, but I'm going to give them that 24-hour period to kind of figure it out, figure out what they think. And it turns out if you wait that time before you start bugging them, you usually get a lot better feedback because they're not in a rush and they're not just trying to satisfy what you want to hear. And usually they will reply within that 24 hours and actually send you feedback. Now, the second thing is some agents have this feedback go directly to the seller. I don't recommend that just because so much personal stuff can sometimes get mixed into this. What I like to do is I like to review the feedback, filter out any personal stuff that really doesn't have anything to do with the house or the property that the sellers don't really need to know. And then I forward on what is actually helpful for selling the property. Sometimes in these sometimes in this feedback, it's going to say things about the property that could be done better. Um, Maybe it's going to say, hey, the lights, there wasn't a lot of natural light, and we can talk to the seller, hey, make sure we're opening all those windows so that it looks like natural light. So we wanted to have that open line of communication with the seller about this feedback. And maybe some of it's on our end. Maybe they're asking questions about what we're doing and what we should change. And we've got to take that opportunity to fix these problems because, again, that's kind of our fiduciary responsibility. So, in general, when you're talking about feedback, give people 24 hours before you start bugging them, and hopefully they'll send you the feedback before that 24 hours. After 24 hours, give them a call or a text and say, hey, did you have any feedback on that property on your showing? Then we want to filter that info to make sure we take out any personal, hurtful stuff. There's no need to do that and no need to throw any realtors under the bus or anything like that. And then we want to make sure we actually communicate what that feedback could mean to the sellers, what opportunities they have to improve the property, or maybe what things we need to be doing on our end to improve the property. So this is kind of the process of coordinating your showings. And that is the end of this step of the series. And in our next step, we will talk about utilizing the internet for exposure and marketing and listing. See you guys there.